Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Mark Martin. Today, who was behind that hostage-taking incident at a synagogue in Texas Saturday? Now the investigation has gone international. We'll tell you who is being interrogated. A massive, dangerous winter storm hits the southeast as it moves north. And an important religious freedom case is going to the Supreme Court involving a high school football coach. Plus, millions of children in some orphanages are being exploited worldwide for financial gain.
Traffickers target children in orphanages and find ways to get those children into other exploitive environments, whether that is child labor or sexual exploitation.
We'll have more on this story, including what can be done to prevent this from happening. Then later, it's a main attraction in the heart of winter as an ice disc draws tourists. All these stories and more are coming up next.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
We begin with the investigation into the hostage standoff at a Fort Worth, Texas synagogue Saturday. That investigation has now become international in scope, as police in the United Kingdom have arrested 2 people in connection with the hostage-taking. Dale Hurd has our report.
Counter-terrorism police in Manchester, England have detained the teenage sons of Malik Faisal Akram in connection with the hostage standoff at a synagogue in Colleyville, Texas over the weekend. British police are only saying the teenagers are in custody for questioning. Akram reportedly was in touch with his sons during the standoff. Malik Faisal Akram, originally from Blackburn, England, entered the Shabbat service at Congregation Beth Israel in Colleyville Saturday, where police say Akram took a rabbi and 3 others hostage for almost 11 hours before officers stormed the building. Akram could be heard talking on a live stream of this service.
He was talking about Israel, Palestine, Islam, and that he had a gun. He implied he had a bomb in his backpack. It was horrifying.
Cameras suddenly captured a frantic dash to freedom by the hostages. Akram, shot in the head by the hostage rescue team, was found dead in the synagogue. Authorities say he was demanding the release of convicted terrorist Afia Siddiqui. Siddiqui, a Pakistani neuroscientist, was convicted of plotting to kill U.S. soldiers in Afghanistan. She's serving an 86-year sentence at a prison in Fort Worth, not far from the synagogue. The Simon Wiesenthal Center released a statement saying it's no accident a synagogue was chosen for this attack. Texas Congressman Michael McCall said it shows anti-Semitism is alive and well.
We need to get to the bottom of this. We haven't seen one of these radicalized attacks in a few years now, and it's disturbing to see it raise its ugly head again.
Joe Biden said the White House is focused on the threat to Jews and Christians from Islamic terrorists.
I wanted to make sure we got the word out to synagogues and places of worship that we're not going to tolerate this, that we have this capacity to deal with assault on particularly the anti-Semitism that has grown up.
The rabbi credited recent training at the synagogue for saving the hostages' lives, saying without the instruction we received, we would not have been prepared to act and flee. Across the country, law enforcement are reportedly stepping up security at Jewish synagogues and schools. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Turning now to the dangerous winter storm combining high winds and ice that swept through parts of the southeast Sunday as it moved north, where the governor of New York warned people about trying to travel.
With the darkness and ice on the roads and high winds, this could be a very dangerous situation.
The storm knocked out power, felling trees and fences and coating roads with a treacherous, frigid glaze. Tens of thousands of customers were without power in Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Florida. Highway patrols reported hundreds of vehicle accidents, with 2 killed in North Carolina when their cars slid off an icy highway, I-95. The storm system also caused a tornado in Fort Myers, Florida, destroying more than 24 mobile homes. Now for more on this storm and where it's heading, here's our report from AccuWeather.
Hey everyone, I'm meteorologist Michelle Rotella with the AccuWeather Network, tracking multiple power outages for homes and business from parts of the southeast through the mid-Atlantic and up to parts of the northeast for this morning. Many waking up in the dark. And in fact, take a look at some of the snow reports that we've seen across places like Flat Rock, North Carolina. Top total there, over 15 inches of snow that has fallen. On top of that, we dealt with the freezing rain from yesterday that's going to create just treacherous conditions across parts of the southeast for travel today. So they saw over half an inch for ice accumulation in places like Kershaw, South Carolina, Pageland, South Carolina as well, even Greenwood down to Jefferson, Boonesboro, Virginia. You saw that ice accumulation too. Then we started to tack on snow accumulation across parts of the mid-Atlantic for places like Willis, Virginia, Maysville, Kentucky, and Wardinsville, West Virginia, where you saw 7 inches of snow. For this morning, starting to see the system slowly work its way to parts of New England. We are getting in on some of that drier air into those mid-levels of the atmosphere. So seeing this dry slot working its way up for parts of central Pennsylvania, trying to nudge its way into central New York. But look at the heavy rain that we are still seeing just north of the Philly area, passing through New York City up into the Boston area that will eventually be working its way to Portland. And on the back side of that, you have plenty of cold air still in place with temperatures well below freezing. So it's ongoing snow showers and it's extremely windy conditions that you're going to be dealing with, especially along the coastal areas where you're seeing heavy rain. That's 31 miles per hour for your wind speed right now, not even a gust across the Boston area. So still going to be dealing with the wintry mix in some places closer to the coastal areas out to the Cape. It's rain showers. I mentioned the snow that will continue on the back side of this, making for a very cold Monday, more interior across parts of the coastal areas. We'll stay with temperatures in the 30s and 40s for you for today. Notice just around the lunch hour and after that, you're still dealing with rain showers, but the snow, it continues on the back side of this. In fact, we could pick up additional snowfall, but all in all, when it comes to totals for places like Syracuse, you're looking at 10 to 15 inches, Plymouth and New Hampshire, 10 to 15 inches of snow as well in Johnstown, PA, getting up there in those high totals. It is cold for our Monday night, temperatures falling to the 20s. We see chilly temperatures and conditions across the mid-Atlantic for your Tuesday and bitter cold across parts of the Northeast as we head into our Tuesday.
In other news, Virginia's new governor is already taking action with several executive orders. Republican Glenn Youngkin was sworn in this weekend alongside Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears and Attorney General Jason Miyares. The 55-year-old former executive is a first-time politician who surprised many by turning Virginia from blue to red with the help of independent voters and even some Democrats. Now he's calling on Virginians in both parties to put differences aside.
We must bind the wounds of division, restore trust, find common cause for the common good, and strengthen the spirit of Virginia.
Youngkin is a devout Christian who won the evangelical vote by nearly 90%. He mobilized voters on issues like education, insisting students be in school 5 days a week and that the classroom is no place for politics. And new Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears and Attorney General Jason Miyares made history. Sears is the first woman of color and Miyares the first Latino to hold statewide office. As the U.S. honors Martin Luther King Jr. today, Atlanta's mayor, Georgia's governor, and U.S. Senator Raphael Warnock are scheduled to attend the annual service in his honor at King's old congregation, Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta. The service at Ebenezer and other events surrounding the holiday commemorate what would have been King's 93rd birthday. The Supreme Court will hear oral arguments from a former Washington State high school football coach who was fired over his post-game prayers. In 2015, Joe Kennedy was fired by the Bremerton School District for kneeling on the 50-yard line after football games and silently praying. As CBN News has reported, his actions were praised by multiple players, even opposing team members. However, school officials worried that those prayers might give the appearance that the district approved of Coach Kennedy's public prayers, creating a potential endorsement of religion. They eventually fired Kennedy, who calls that a violation of his right to free speech. Evangelist and author Anne Graham Lotz, the daughter of the late Reverend Billy Graham, says God has answered our prayers as her daughter Rachel Ruth was set to be released from the hospital after unexpectedly suffering 2 heart attacks. God has answered our prayers, Graham Lotz wrote in a Facebook post, "Join us in praising him. He has surely been an ever-present help in times of trouble." At first, doctors attributed Rachel Ruth's heart attacks to a very rare condition one doctor described to the evangelist as broken heart syndrome, an issue for which there is no known cause. The cardiologist working with her has since diagnosed Rachel Ruth with spontaneous coronary artery dissection as the cause of the two heart attacks. And you can find out more about both of these stories and the football coach's case at CBNNews.com. Well, coming up, a streaming platform raises money to invest in more family-friendly films, and a miraculous story of a rescue of 3 children stuck in a pond. All this coming up next. Welcome back to Newswatch. We have 2 inspiring stories to share that I'm sure will put a smile on your face. First, Angel Studios, the streaming platform behind great films like the Chosen franchise, has raised $47 million in an effort to remake Hollywood. And check this out, a Colorado woman is hailed a hero after rescuing 3 children that fell in a pond 15 feet deep. Joining us now with more on these stories is Billy Hallowell of FaithWire.com. Thanks for joining us, Billy.
Hey, thanks for having me.
First of all, how is Angel Studios planning to remake Hollywood with this $47 million investment?
So, Angel Studios, for those who don't know, what they're doing is they're allowing creators to basically knock down the barrier of Hollywood, right? Hollywood makes the decisions about what is made. And we know that there are so many people out in America, millions of people who want faith and family-friendly content. A lot of that content that would be really amazing doesn't get made. So what Angel does is they allow creators to raise money to crowdfund, similarly to donating to somebody in need, right? We do lots of different crowdfunding in culture. Well, when it comes to what they're doing, they actually put the project out there and they allow people to invest. And so The Chosen is obviously the biggest project we've seen in this vein. They raised more money than any other project in Hollywood history, not just in the faith space. So this is a major, major effort. And Angel Studios just raised $47 million in venture capital. They're going to use that to improve their platform and to bring more projects into the pipeline. But I have to tell you, if you go over to their website and look, I mean, there's a new cartoon about King David, that they raised $5 million for. So this is really amazing because, again, it knocks down that wall and it allows amazing projects that might never see the light of day to actually see the light of day.
Shifting gears a little bit, what can you tell us about this miraculous rescue of 3 children that fell into a 15-foot deep pond, and how are they doing today?
So this story is remarkable. These children were playing out on a pond in Colorado, and they thought the ice was solid. It was not. They fell through the ice, and this 23-year-old woman, Dusty Talavera, happened to be looking out the window at the very moment that the kids fell through the ice. She was inside of her apartment. She ran out the door, got onto the ice without even thinking, and starts pulling the children out. She got 2 of the kids out of the ice, out of the water, but one of the girls, Dusty, actually fell through the water as she was trying to rescue her. Thank goodness there was another person there who was able to help get them out. When they pulled the 6-year-old out of the water, she had no heartbeat. She was revived. And it's an amazing story. This little girl, Zakaya, she is completely healthy. She's fine. She survived. And they were reunited last week at an amazing couple of news conferences where Dusty and Zakaya came together and had a chance to meet one another and talk. And I mean, thank goodness this little girl and the other 2 kids are all fine.
That's wonderful. Yeah, it's great to hear. I love when we can put stories like that on our newscast. Well, what can we expect on this week's Faith Wire?
So we've got a lot coming up. We have an interview with John Cooper of Skillet, a long-ranging interview with him. We've also got the March for Life coming on Friday. We're going to have live coverage of that. We will be on the ground talking with people who are in the march and catching up with people who are speaking there. So that's going to be a big event. I'd encourage people to check out our YouTube channel to watch that.
Right. Billy Hallowell with FaithWire.com. Thanks for joining us, Billy. Thanks for your insights.
Thanks for having me.
And you can catch Faith Wire tonight at 8:30 Eastern on the CBN News Channel or on the CBN News app. Well, still ahead, children in orphanages are at risk of being exploited sexually, all to secure charity funds. We're going to have more on this shocking story next. $10 million children worldwide are exploited sexually or are being used for slave labor. According to a new report from the Lumos Foundation, 5 million children living in orphanages are also at risk of exploitation for the purpose of securing charitable donations. Appearing on the CBN program The Global Lane, the executive director of the Faith to Action initiative explains what can be done to protect these children.
More than 5 children around the world, 5 million children, are living in orphanages, and therefore they have either been victims or at risk of being victims of what Lumos calls institution-related trafficking. And that's really 4 different things. One is children being recruited into institutions, what we would call orphanages or children's homes. And this is really called orphanage trafficking. And often it's families out in the country who are convinced by really recruiters that they should turn their children over to the orphanage for a better life. And we know that's not really what those children are receiving. Instead, they're being exploited for funding and support that doesn't go directly to those children. And the second way that trafficking is really interlaced with orphanages is traffickers target children in orphanages and find ways to get those children into other exploitive environments, whether that is child labor or sexual exploitation. This report also highlights what we know is true, that when young people come out of orphanages, when they age out, at 18 years old, they're at much higher risk of ending up in exploitive situations on the streets and otherwise. And finally, the report highlights how when victims of trafficking are brought out or rescued out of their situation, they're often taken to orphanages. And we know that this isn't the best place for them. It's not a place that can provide the stability that they need coming from a really vulnerable place. So the report really highlights a messy kind of interlacing between orphanages and trafficking that I think it's important that we all learn about.
And I must point out that many orphanages are good. Christian groups are helping to provide for children that otherwise would go without food, a decent education, keep them secure from the streets and exploitation. But then there are others. I understand in countries like Cambodia and Uganda, some orphanages are placed specifically in tourist hotspots. Why is that? Tell us about that.
Exactly. I think we need to think about how the direction of funding for orphaned and vulnerable children plays a really significant role in creating an environment where orphanage trafficking can happen. Billions of dollars are sent to orphanages every year. We just worked with the Barna Group on a study that found that $2.5 billion every year are sent from U.S. Christian individuals to some sort of residential care, whether that is an orphanage, children's home, group homes. So, wow, that's incredible. $2.5 billion. At first glance, the generosity is just overwhelming. But then when you think about it a little bit, you realize that's a lot of money. And in some ways, it's created a bit of an industry. And unfortunately, if this is an industry, children become the commodity. And so when we see motivation around financial gain, when it comes to children, developing countries, poor countries, have an incentive to keep orphanages because orphanages equal money. And that limits our ability to pursue what's really best for kids. And there are other options for most of these children around the world.
Well, let's talk about what can be done then about this. How can Christian groups and individuals that are helping overseas orphanages, and I guess even some right here in the USA, be assured that their support isn't going to enable child exploitation? What can be done?
Yeah, there's a growing movement that's recognizing the value of family and really pursuing other options for these children. And so there's an achievable alternative that puts children at much less risk. And that's what we call family care. And the best way ultimately to meet the needs of vulnerable children is to strengthen the capacity of their families to care well for them. So that means identifying vulnerable families and making sure that they're well equipped to care for their children. That's something that the local church is so well equipped to do. The second is directing our resources so that our funding, our mission trips and volunteering, even government services are targeting vulnerable families, and then supporting alternative family options like foster care and adoption in these countries so that every child has the opportunity to be raised in a place where they can find their identity and their belonging and their safety. And we see organizations working all over the world towards this new vision of how we care for orphaned children. And there's a lot of wonderful things happening across the world.
Okay, what a concept, raising the standard of living for some of these impoverished families. I know in Afghanistan they're selling their children right now because they're hungry. Ellie Oswald, Executive Director of Faith to Action Initiative. Thank you, Ellie, for sharing your time and insights.
Thank you so much.
Still ahead, ice discs. It's a main attraction drawing tourists during this winter season. Stay tuned for more details. It's the main attraction, a swirling disc of ice drawing tourists to Maine in the heart of winter once again. The frozen circle of water went viral in 2019 after curiously forming in the middle of Westbrook River. Ice discs form as a result of a current and vortex under the ice. Local business owners noticed the spinning ring earlier this week, but by Wednesday, freezing temperatures had halted the rotation. That did not stop tourists from visiting, though. Hopefully, some warmer temps get the ice disc moving again. Wow. What a wonder. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of CBN News Watch. Remember, you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel anytime or online with cbnnews.com. Also, tell us what you think about the stories you've seen, and you can do that by emailing newswatch@cbn.com or talk to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hope you'll join us next time. Have a great day.